Great. And once again, welcome everyone. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen so that we can read the first section today, which is Course in Miracles, chapter 28, the Ark of Safety. God asks for nothing, and his son, like him, need ask for nothing. For there is no lack in him. An empty space, a little gap, would be a lack. And it is only there that he could want for something he has not. A space where God is not. A gap between the Father and the Son is not the will of either, who have promised to be one. God's promise is a promise to himself. And there is no one who could be untrue to what he wills as part of what he is. The promise that there is no gap between himself and what he is cannot be false. What will can come between what must be one, and in whose wholeness there can be no gap. The beautiful relationship you have with all your brothers is a part of you because it is a part of God himself. Are you not sick if you deny yourself your wholeness and your health, the source of help, the call to healing, and the call to heal? Your Savior waits for healing, and the world waits with him. Nor are you apart from it, for healing will be one or not at all. Its oneness being where the healing is. What could correct for separation but its opposite? There is no middle ground in any aspect of salvation. You accept it wholly or accept it not. What is unseparated must be joined, and what is joined cannot be separate. Either there is a gap between you and your brother, or you are as one. There is no in-between, no other choice, and no allegiance to be split between the two. A split allegiance is but faithlessness to both, and merely sets you spinning around to grasp uncertainly at any straw that seems to hold some promise of relief. Yet who can build his home upon a straw and count on it as shelter from the wind? The body can be made a home like this because it lacks foundation in the truth. And yet, because it does, it can be seen as not your home, but merely as an aid to help you reach the home where God abides. With this as purpose, is the body healed? It is not used to witness to the dream of separation and disease, nor is it idly blamed for what it did not do. It serves to help the healing of God's Son, and for this purpose, it cannot be sick. It will not join a purpose not your own, and you have chosen that it not be sick. All miracles are based upon this choice, and given you the instant it is made. No forms of sickness are immune, because the choice cannot be made in terms of form. The choice of sickness seems to be of form, yet it is one as is its opposite. And you are sick or well accordingly. But never you alone. The world is but the dream that you can be alone and think without affecting those apart from you. To be alone must mean you are apart. And if you are, you cannot but be sick. This seems to prove that you must be apart. Yet all it means is that you tried to keep a promise to be true to faithlessness. Yet faithlessness is sickness. It is like the house set upon straw. It seems to be quite solid and substantial in itself, yet its stability cannot be judged apart from its foundation. If it rests on straw, there's no need to bar the door and lock the windows and make fast the bolts. The wind will topple it, and rain will come and carry it into oblivion. What is the sense in seeking to be safe in what was made for danger and for fear? Why burden it with further locks and chains and heavy anchors when its weakness lies not in itself, but in the frailty of the little gap of nothingness whereon it stands? What can be safe that rests upon a shadow? Would you build your home upon what will collapse beneath a feather's weight? Your home is built upon your brother's health, upon his happiness, his sinlessness, and everything his father promised him. No secret promise you have made instead has shaken the foundation of his home. The winds will blow upon it and the rain will beat against it, but with no effect. The world will wash away, and yet this house will stand forever, for its strength lies not within itself alone. It is an ark of safety, resting on God's promise that his son is safe forever in himself. What gap can interpose itself between the safety of this shelter and its source? From here, the body can be seen as what it is, and neither less nor more, and worth than the extent to which it can be used to liberate God's Son unto his home. And with this holy purpose is it made a home of holiness a little while, because it shares your Father's will with you. Ah. Welcome, Maynard. Welcome, Cynthia. Hi, Mary. Great to have you guys here. We just read chapter 28, section 7, the Ark of Safety, which is the end of chapter 28. Dun, dun. Any comments about the Ark of Safety? All about that little gap, right? All about whether we believe there is a gap between us and our brothers or not. We were talking earlier before we started reading just about some relationships going on, and how we see ourselves as separate, separate from the other, that there's a conflict, that there's a disagreement, that there's a disassociation in thought and belief system. And that's that little gap, right? That's that little gap that makes us feel like we're separate and we're not the same.
I have a question. I don't know how relevant it is, but in the second paragraph, there are two in the same sentence. What sentence is the second sentence? There's a two times they capitalize call in the middle of the sentence. I know capitalizing him and his and means God, but uh, why would call be because it's God's call? They
I would
capitalize.
say, yeah, it's God's voice calling, right?
Okay. That's what immediately came to my mind, but it was just like, why would they? I mean, I've never seen
Yeah,
it other times in the in there that it was referring to his talking or his, but anyway.
good point. Good find. Yeah, because the right before that it says the source of help, the call to healing and the call to heal. Maybe they're just reframing the source of help as the call to healing and the call to heal.
The source is capitalized too, and I could understand that, I guess.
Right, right. But I
But
guess that's what I'm thinking. Maybe they're reframing that statement and kind of expounding on it, like the source.
and then in the first paragraph also, there in the fifth sentence, it's either is capitalized too.
Next sentence, let's see here, Savior.
The will of either. Will and either are will, I've seen that capitalized, but either
Where are we?
the first paragraph,
The
uh, sen
first.
sentence 5.
Sentence 5. Okay. A space where God is not a gap between the Father and the Son is not the will of either. So you see where Father and Son are capitalized?
Yeah, but that I'm used to.
Yeah, I think they're saying is not the will of, and instead of saying Father and the Son, they just said either capitalized because they're speaking about the Father and the Son again.
Okay.
That would be my interpretation.
Okay. That has nothing to do with the context.
Right, right, right. Um, yeah, it's all about refusing to see the gap between us and our brother. It's interesting because I've been hearing the prayer Ha'opo'ono a lot lately, and that's such a great prayer, right? Such a powerful prayer about forgiveness. Because I feel like sometimes we think we're right, and sometimes the other person thinks they're right. And in order to find that middle ground, um, it's hard to get to that middle ground, right? Because we think, well, I'm right because I'm saying this because I care about this, that, and the other. And the other person saying, well, I'm right because I care about this, that, and the other. But when you look at the fact that both of you have similar things that you care about, it's just this one particular issue you seem to be on opposite beliefs about, right? But if you could just look at that person from that place of peace and be able to say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, right? That's what they want to hear. You don't want to say it because you're really not sorry. You're really holding on to your opinion and your belief, right? But in truth, you both want the same thing. You both want that love and understanding, and you both want that path forward together, right? And yeah, and Alicia said, love that prayer. I do it often. And there's another article about it. Yeah, it's so powerful, right? So if you could think of somebody right now and you both are on opposite ends of your belief, imagine hearing those words from them. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. Imagine hearing that from someone that you're having a disagreement with right now.
So
Wouldn't
the
that be
prayer,
wonderful?
what is it? The prayer, the name of it?
The Ha'opo'ono, it's a prayer, it's a Hawaiian prayer.
I've
And
never heard it before.
yeah, it's Alicia shared the link in a link in the chat if you want to check it out. But it's such a beautiful way to get to that place of forgiveness and oneness. And really it dissolves the gap if you think about it. It's a great way to dissolve the gap.
Yep. Yeah, and sometimes you could even use it because sometimes when you're in the argument, you don't realize it until you are apart.
Right.
So sometimes it's good to use it then when you
Then,
recognize, oh, wait a minute, you're just saying it to yourself.
right.
I mean, because this is happening often now with me and somebody who's in the course, and they have their own take on it, and I have my opinion on it. And lately, what I've been doing is just saying, look, that's my opinion. You have yours, I have mine. I respect yours. If you want to respect, fine, mine or not. But I'd rather be happy than be right.
Yes. Yes.
That's another way to offset. If you catch yourself in that moment, because
Right.
that moment is so crucial to the outcome.
Right. Because in that moment, you're aligned with fear and
Yep.
you're justified in your anger.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
if you can stop in that moment and instead align with love, I think that prayer does it right there.
Yep.
Because the last thing the ego wants to do is apologize.
Yeah. Like the ego wants to be right, regardless.
That's
Want to be
exactly
right
right.
or do you want to be happy?
Well,
That's
we're
right.
not thinking about happiness when we're in an argument. That's the whole point. That if you can catch yourself and be able to make that switch, I mean,
Yes.
sometimes you cannot, you don't find that button. That button it eludes you.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
But I'm learning one thing, that I'm no longer arguing any point with anybody, regardless. It's like, okay, if I see it going that way, I try to stop it before it gets out of hand somehow.
Right, right.
Oh yeah, that happened. That's been happening a lot with me lately. But I think that book that I'm reading is helping also. That other book, because it goes into that. This book that I'm reading talks about our emotions being our teachers,
Mm.
hands down. If you're able to find what it is, because most of the time I have to ask, okay, what am I supposed to be learning from this? I'm not learning anything right now, so I'm just gonna put it over here in the back burner for a while because it's going nowhere, right?
Sure.
And
My
it will.
back burner is awful
The answer will
full.
come. The answer will come. Though this
Mhm.
is the thing with it. If you're able to put it aside and say, I'm so blinded by what's going on that I cannot understand why I'm in this mess. Yeah.
Yeah.
My back burner is full.
Could you put
Well,
the
it's-
name of that book in the chat? I'd like to look that up too.
Oh God. Can somebody put it in the chat for me? Because I'm on my
It's
phone.
Bringers, it's Bringers of the Dawn.
Okay, thank you.
By
It's about
Barbara
the Pleiadians. Yeah.
Marciniak. Spelled Marciniak. Marciniak.
Wonder where that
Barb-
comes from.
Barbara
Ah,
Marciniak.
thank you, Gail,
Cynic.
for adding that. Gail just added it to the chat for everybody.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, shall we keep going? On to the next chapter. All right. A Course in Miracles, chapter 29, The Awakening, the closing of the gap. There is no time, no place, no state where God is absent. There is nothing to be feared. There is no way in which a gap could be conceived of in the wholeness that is His. The compromise, the least and littlest gap would represent in His eternal love, is quite impossible, for it would mean His love could harbor just a hint of hate. His gentleness turn sometimes to attack, and His eternal patience sometimes fail. All this do you believe when you perceive a gap between your brother and yourself. How could you trust him then? For he must be deceptive in his love. Be wary then, let him not come too close and leave a gap between you and his love, through which you can escape if there be need for you to flee. Here is the fear of God most plainly seen, for love is treacherous to those who fear, since fear and hate can never be apart. No one who hates but is afraid of love, and therefore must he be afraid of God. Certain it is he knows not what love means. He fears to love and loves to hate, and so he thinks that love is fearful. Hate is love. This is the consequence the little gap must bring to those who cherish it and think that is their salvation and their hope. The fear of God, the greatest obstacle that peace must flow across, has not yet gone. The rest are past, but this one still remains to block your path and make the way to light seem dark and fearful, perilous and bleak. You had decided that your brother is your enemy. Sometimes a friend, perhaps, provided that your separate interests made your friendship possible a little while, but not without a gap perceived between you and him, lest he turn again into an enemy. Let him come close to you, and you jump back. As you approached, did he but instantly withdraw? A cautious friendship, a limited in scope and carefully restricted in amount, became the treaty that you had made with him. Thus you and your brother but shared a qualified entente, in which a clause of separation was a point you both agreed to keep intact. And violating this, was thought to be a breach of treaty and not to be allowed. The gap between you and your brother is not one of space between two separate bodies. And this but seems to be dividing off your separate minds. It is the symbol of a promise made to meet when you prefer and separate till you and he elect to meet again. And then your bodies seem to get in touch and thereby signify a meeting place to join. But always is it possible for you and him to go your separate ways. Conditional upon the right to separate, will you and he agree to meet from time to time and keep apart in intervals of separation, which do protect you from the sacrifice of love. The body saves you, for it gets away from total sacrifice and gives to you the time in which to build again your separate self, which you truly believe diminishes as you and your brother meet. The body could not separate your mind from your brother's unless you wanted it to be a cause of separation and of distance seen between you and him. Thus do you endow it with a power that lies not within itself. And herein lies its power over you. For now you think that it determines when your brother and you meet and limits your ability to make communion with your brother's mind. And now it tells you where to go and how to go there, what is feasible for you to undertake and what you cannot do. It dictates what its health can tolerate, and what will tire it and make it sick. And its inherent weaknesses set up the limitations on what you would do and keep your purpose limited and weak. The body will accommodate to this if you would have it so. It will allow but limited indulgences in love, with intervals of hatred in between. And it will take command of when to love and when to shrink more safely into fear. It will be sick because you do not know what loving means. And so you must misuse each circumstance and everyone you meet and see in them a purpose, not your own. It is not love that asks a sacrifice, but fear demands the sacrifice of love. For in love's presence, fear cannot abide. For hate to be maintained, love must be feared, and only sometimes present, sometimes gone. Thus is love seen as treacherous, because it seems to come and go uncertainly and offer no stability to you. You do not see how limited and weak is your allegiance, and how frequently you have demanded that love go away and leave you quietly alone in peace. The body, innocent of goals, is your excuse for variable goals you hold and force the body to maintain. You do not fear its weakness, but its lack of strength or weakness. Would you know that nothing stands between you and your brother? Would you know there is no gap behind which you can hide? There is a shock that comes to those who learn their Savior is their enemy no more. There is a wariness that is aroused by learning that the body is not real. And there are overtones of seeming fear around the happy message, God is love. Yet all that happens when the gap is gone is peace eternal. Nothing more than that, and nothing less. Without the fear of God, what could induce you to abandon him? What toys or trinkets in the gap could serve to hold you back an instant from his love? Would you allow the body to say no to heaven's calling? Were you not afraid to find a loss of self in finding God? Yet can yourself be lost by being found? There's a lot in that one. Makes it simple, right? but not so easy. If we could just know that there is no gap. If we could just see that oneness in our brothers at all times. Without the fear of losing our self, our little self, right? I know I've gone through times like that. I can see myself in so many situations throughout my life where I've definitely separated from my brother, thinking, oh my gosh, he's sucking the life out of me. I need to be alone. I need to get myself back. Because I had that illusion that I was separate in the first place.
I think
I mean,
it's,
what I see, do, do, go ahead, whoever spoke up.
I was just gonna say, I think it's easier to accept that we are one with God than it is one with people we don't agree with. And yet they are God, we are God. But it's that gap that's just so hard to get over sometimes.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Ernesto?
I was going to say that sometimes in our belief system, you know, we associate certain words with certain things that have happened to us. And we, for example, we might believe because we've been hurt in love, we might believe that love hurts. So we already have this concept of love is hurting. And maybe that's what we interject into a lot of our, like when we're like in this state of an argument with somebody about being right, whether it's that or whatever it is, you know, we see them as separate because we're no longer in that love vibe. If we can maintain the love vibe, then that can center us. But because we already have this concept of that love hurts from previous whatever has happened to us, it's still a button for us, and it immediately brings that up: separation. You know, this person doesn't know what they're talking about, and it prevents us from. That's what I think. That's where the gap develops: the absence of love, in essence.
Yeah, because we're always looking outside of ourselves for love, right? We were
Exactly.
never told where to find it,
Exactly.
right? We
Because
were
we're always
always
looking outside
told,
ourselves. Yep.
yeah,
Um,
do this, be good, be nice to everyone, and you'll be loved, right? Instead of nurturing self-love and that connection to God and that connection to source. And then,
because we forget. We seem to forget that love is always there. It's you can't corrupt it. It's uncorruptible. Love is love.
right.
Boom. And accepting
Yeah.
that, you know,
Yeah.
that's the key.
And you can't get that from your brother. You can only share it with your brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's-
because if you don't love yourself, you won't really feel it unconditionally from someone else. You're receiving it in a limited way because you have limited the love you have for yourself. Therefore, you're not sending out that unlimited love and you're not receiving it back because you're under that veil of separation.
Exactly.
I know. So I read this little phrase from that book that said, "Evil is part of the divine." It kind of shocked me at first when I read it. I had to reread it a few times. That evil is part of the divine. It's still
Except
shocking.
you don't see it as evil. You just see it as part of the divine. You drop the label. And that's how you can then see it. It's everything is a part of the whole. Once you label it, then it feels like it's tugging you in one direction or another, instead of just seeing it as all inclusive.
How have you come to understand that phrase? Because that sounds very counter to the Course.
it's challenging to me still. The only way that I can, because I kept saying it to, I kept saying it. The only thing what has happened is that I say, okay, so that means that it's not so evil. Evil is not so evil. I think it's misunderstood. I read the thing way back when from Don Miguel saying that what all black magic is when we're in anger, when we're having these anger, revengeful thoughts. That's what black magic is. Black magic is not this voodoo thing that has been inculcated in us. There's no way that you could hurt someone unless you accept it yourself for yourself. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's the belief in it.
Right, right.
And it holds the power. Right.
And then if that other person is not receiving it or accepting it, guess who it falls back on?
The person who believes in it. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes. So being part of the divine kind of gives it that whole turnaround feeling, I guess is what I'm saying. Or
Yeah.
I'm feeling that. I'm feeling that.
Yeah, I could see that. It's kind of like saying, my brother is not my brother is myself. Right? It's like evil is not evil. Evil is just a figment of my fearful imagination. And if I no longer give it that power and I attribute all things as part of the source energy and creation, then it no longer can be evil. Unless you want to label it as evil and just
Yeah. So I had this experience where listening to some music, some Caribbean music, and they were playing something along the lines, something called Santeria, which comes from Africa, and then it was incorporated into some of the slave songs, and it was considered by some to be kind of a voodoo thing. Santeria. I'm trying to translate it. I don't know that I can translate it, but it has to do with the saints and the worship of saints and or evil saints or evil whatever. And one of the things from reading Don Miguel's, when I understood that, you know what, that wasn't really evil. The evil that came out of that was incorporated from other sources that defined it as being evil. And I remember having a conversation with someone, and then the music is so melodious that people were dancing to it, including this person was moving to it because didn't believe what I was trying to tell them. And so I went over and I said, well, you're moving pretty good with the music. You must be enjoying it, right? So how could that be evil?
Yeah.
I mean, that's it's a very tricky thing going on here now with this whole concept of evil and good and
Words are symbols of symbols.
mm-hmm.
Which don't exist.
Right. Exactly. All right. Any other conversations before we continue? Okay, let's keep on going. The coming of the guest. Why would you not perceive it as release from suffering to learn that you are free? Why would you not acclaim the truth instead of looking on it as an enemy? Why does an easy path, so clearly marked, it is impossible to lose the way, seem thorny, rough, and far too difficult for you to follow? Is it not because you see it as the road to hell, instead of looking on it as a simple way, without a sacrifice or any loss, to find yourself in heaven and in God? Until you realize you give up nothing, until you understand there is no loss, you will have some regrets about the way that you have chosen, and you will not see the many gains your choice has offered you. Yet, though you do not see them, they are there. Their cause has been effected, and they must be present where their cause has entered in. You have accepted healing's cause, and so it must be you are healed. And being healed, the power to heal must also now be yours. The miracle is not a separate thing that happens suddenly as an effect without a cause, nor is it in itself a cause, but where its cause is, must it be. Now is it caused, though not as yet perceived, and its effects are there, though not yet seen. Look inward now, and you will not behold a reason for regret, but cause indeed for glad rejoicing and for hope of peace. It has been hopeless to attempt to find the hope of peace upon a battleground. It has been futile to demand escape from sin and pain of what was made to serve the function of retaining sin and pain. For pain and sin are one illusion, as are hate and fear, attack and guilt, but one. Where they are causeless, their effects are gone, and love must come wherever they are not. Why are you not rejoicing? You are free of pain and sickness, misery and loss, and all effects of hatred and attack. No more is pain your friend and guilt your God, and you should welcome the effects of love. Your guest has come. You asked him, and he came. You did not hear him enter, for you did not wholly welcome him. And yet his gifts came with him. He has laid them at your feet and asks you now that you will look on them and take them for your own. He needs your help in giving them to all who walk apart, believing they are separate and alone. They will be healed when you accept your gifts, because your guest will welcome everyone whose feet have touched the holy ground whereupon you stand, and where his gifts for them are laid. You do not see how much you now can give because of everything you have received. Yet he who entered in but waits for you to come where you invited him to be. There is no other place where he can find his host, nor where his host can meet with him. And nowhere else his gifts of peace and joy and all the happiness his presence brings can be obtained. For they are where he is who brought them with him, that they might be yours. You cannot see your guest, but you can see the gifts he brought. And when you look on them, you will believe his presence must be there. For what you now can do could not be done without the love and grace his presence holds. Such is the promise of the living God. His Son, have life, and every living thing be part of him, and nothing else have life. What you have given life is not alive, and symbolizes but your wish to be alive apart from life, alive in death, with death perceived as life, and living, death. Confusion follows on confusion here, for on confusion has this world been based, and there's nothing else it rests upon. Its basis does not change, although it seems to be in constant change. Yet, what is that except the state of confusion really means? Stability, to those who are confused, is meaningless, and shift and change become the law on which they predicate their lives. The body does not change. It represents the larger dream that change is possible. To change is to attain a state unlike the one in which you found yourself before. There is no change in immortality, and heaven knows it not. Yet here on earth it has a double purpose, for it can be made to teach opposing things, and they reflect the teacher who is teaching them. The body can appear to change with time, with sickness, or with health, and with events that seem to alter it. Yet this but means the mind remains unchanged in its belief of what the purpose of the body is. Sickness is a demand the body be a thing that it is not. Its nothingness is guarantee that it cannot be sick. In your demand that it be more than this lies the idea of sickness. For it asks that God be less than all he really is. What then becomes of you? For it is you of whom the sacrifice is asked. For he is told that part of him belongs to him no longer. He must sacrifice yourself. And in his sacrifice are you made more, and he is lessened by the loss of you. And what is gone from him becomes your God, protecting you from being part of him. The body that is asked to be a God will be attacked because its nothingness has not been recognized. And so it seems to be a thing with power in itself. As something, it can be perceived and thought to feel and act and hold you in its grasp as prisoner to itself. And it can fail to be what you demanded that it be. And you will hate it for its littleness, unmindful that the failure does not lie in that it is not more than it should be, but only in your failure to perceive that it is nothing. Yet its nothingness is your salvation, from which you would flee. As something, is the body asked to be God's enemy, replacing what he is with littleness and limit and despair. It is his loss you celebrate when you behold the body as a thing you love, or look upon it as a thing you hate. For if he be the sum of everything, then what is not in him does not exist, and his completion is its nothingness. Your Savior is not dead, nor does he dwell in what was built as temple unto death. He lives in God, and it is this that makes him Savior unto you, and only this. His body's nothingness releases yours from sickness and from death. For what is yours cannot be more or less than what is his. Going back to why we're not afraid to fly, right, Pam? The question was asked earlier, are you nervous about flying? Because I just got back from visiting my daughter, and I said, anytime I'm nervous about something like that, I always think, I'm not really a body. There is no death.
And in that way, there's no sickness either. We tend to want to say, oh, you won't experience sickness if you believe as spirit, but sickness is just a communication tool. Your perception of it is that it's the dis-ease that can be massaged, if you will, into your state of ease again, but the body's just communicating it. I mean, technically we lay down our body and die, but this statement said we know that that's not all there is. And it's kind of the same thing about sickness. Yes, we can be in a state of dis-ease, and we can then be well back in that state of ease. That the body has we have these experiences here in duality as communication.
Well said, Mary. Thank you for that.
This is something that I work with right now with Parkinson's and Crohn's. They can feel very real, and can very much make you look at your body more than you might otherwise. So right now, what I'm working on is trying to see the body differently, trying to see those issues. They won't go away probably from the dream, but how they're managed, I think, in the dream can be something to be worked on. At least that's what I'm trying to do at this point. But it's a real challenge, and especially with the Parkinson's, which is actually Parkinsonian, which is multiple system atrophy. That's tougher than regular Parkinson. And so sometimes I can get really tied up in it and scared with it. And it's I think is a good challenge to find God in the midst of all of that, and not be controlled by those things, but try to find out what they teach.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Maynard. Yeah. Definitely always a challenge, and always great to look at them as a communication tool, as Mary mentioned. What is this trying to teach me? What is this trying to show me about who I am and what I am? And how can I still close the gap between myself and my brother? How can that still remain my goal? Right? To close that gap, to not see the gap between my brother and myself, to see my brother as my salvation. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else have anything they want to share with regard to what we just read? All right, I'm going to go ahead and keep going then. See what the next section has to enlighten us with. God's witnesses. Condemn your Savior, not because he thinks he is a body, for beyond his dreams is his reality. But he must learn he is a Savior first, before he can remember what he is. And he must save who would be saved. On saving you depends his happiness. For who is Savior but the one who gives salvation? Thus he learns it must be his to give. Unless he gives, he will not know he has. For giving is the proof of having. Only those who think that God is lessened by their strength could fail to understand this must be so. For who could give unless he has? And who could lose by giving what must be increased thereby? Think you the Father lost himself when he created you? Was he made weak because he shared his love? Was he made incomplete by your perfection? Or are you the proof that he is perfect and complete? Deny him not his witness, and the dream his Son prefers to his reality. He must be Savior from the dream he made, that he be free of it. He must see someone else as not a body, one with him, without the wall the world has built to keep apart all living things, who know not that they live. Within the dream of bodies and of death is yet one theme true, no more perhaps than just a tiny spark, a space of light created in the dark, where God still shines. You cannot wake yourself, yet you can let yourself be awakened. You can overlook your brother's dreams. So perfectly can you forgive him his illusions. He becomes your savior from your dreams. And as you see him shining in the space of light where God abides, within the darkness, you will see that God himself is where his body is. Before this light, the body disappears, as heavy shadows must give way to light. The darkness cannot choose that it remain. The coming of the light means it is gone. In glory will you see your brother then, and understand what really fills the gap, so long perceived as keeping you apart. There, in its place, God's witness has set forth the gentle way of kindness to God's Son. Whom you forgive is given power to forgive you your illusions. By your gift of freedom is it given unto you. Make way for love, which you did not create, but which you can extend. On earth, this means forgive your brother, that the darkness may be lifted from your mind. When light has come to him through your forgiveness, he will not forget his Savior, leaving him unsaved. For it was in your face he saw the light that he would keep beside him as he walks through darkness to the everlasting light. How holy are you that the Son of God can be your Savior in the midst of dreams of desolation and disaster. See how eagerly he comes and steps aside from heavy shadows that have hidden him and shines on you in gratitude and love. He is himself, but not himself alone. And as his Father lost not part of him in your creation, so the light in him is brighter still, because you gave your light to him to save him from the dark. And now the light in you must be as bright as shines in him. This is the spark
Uh-oh.
in his glad salvation. You are saved. That was really beautiful. You know, it brought me right back to that Ha'apo'ono. I'm sorry, please forgive me. Thank you, I love you, right? Your brother just needs your forgiveness. And in your forgiveness, will you be saved?
Will you forgive yourself as well?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. You know, I was listening to a podcast not too long ago that was talking about this, and they said they did this study, and it was this psychiatrist went into, it was a new psychiatrist that was hired to be in this, I don't know if it was a mental institution, but some kind of institution where people were mentally ill. And what he did is he opened up everyone's file and he prayed over every single file. He did the Ho'oponopono prayer. He hadn't met them yet, but he just sent this love and this forgiveness, like, please forgive me. And here he was a brand new doctor. He clearly hadn't done anything to these people, but yet he was still asking for their forgiveness, right? And so he sent this energy out there so that by the time he did meet with all of them, the energetic field had changed, right? Because we all know that all minds are joined and bodies can't really separate because bodies are just part of the illusion. So just doing this prayer and not even telling the person that you're doing it can affect change. And my point was, in this particular study, it ended up that everyone in this institution was healed, and they ended up closing the institution because everybody ended up being healed because of this forgiveness prayer, which I thought was really interesting.
And powerful.
And powerful, right? So powerful, right? Yeah.
Can I add something?
Absolutely.
Excuse me. Actually, he never met with people. The article I linked you to is about the doctor, and he went into his own heart and healed what was that they were a reflection of. Was the whole point?
Oh, so that's what you shared. Awesome.
Yes, yeah.
It's so funny. I was just listening to a podcast on that.
And it's so amazing to me how it aligns with A Course in Miracles. And
Totally.
it's all about you heal it within yourself. You see that he saw that as a reflection of himself. So, and then that's all he did. And it kind of talks about all the changes that happened in the hospital in the article. And there's a book on it, actually, that's
Yeah,
mentioned.
real criminals. Thank you so much for clarifying that, Alicia. I appreciate that.
This has been lovely. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, but how powerful is that, right? And didn't we just read that, right? Condemn your Savior not because he thinks he is a body. Right? That's all about not seeing that gap between you and your brother. Beautiful. Okay, so that's the homework this week. Forgive your brother.
Right. Even when you don't believe it.
Yeah, because it's just the illusion of who you think you are that doesn't believe it. It's not the truth of you, because in truth you're already joined. There is no separation.
Goes along with intent. Just the intent alone is good.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Speaking of
Oh.
healing, I heard a story this week that is related to this and also to Parkinson's, which my husband died with 18 months ago. I read it this week. It really touched me. It was this, there was a double-blind study that was being done, and I don't remember when, sometime back. And one man, the deal was you're going to get serotonin, which the brain, I think it's serotonin, dopamine, I think maybe it's dopamine, whichever drug that the brain kills in Parkinson's, but they were drilling holes in the back of people's heads. And in half of them, they put dopamine, and in half of them, they didn't. And this one man who was practically unable to walk or move, he immediately got well. He was able to start not only walking, but skiing again. And he went on and he lived a perfect life for, until he died. But they ended up saying that the double-blind study did not work, and he never received this in his brain.
Huh.
He healed himself, which we're all capable of doing.
Yeah,
Hmm.
the belief. Mhm. Interesting.
Because we're not really a body.
That's right, because we're not really a body. Exactly.
That's encouraging.
We're a mind that thinks it has a body.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that story. That's helpful.
I kind of want to say that we're a mind that uses that thought of a body for this human experience of separation and how it feels to be separated from the source. So we are far more than the body, but we choose to use that as our vehicle for experience, like we use a car to take us places.
Thank you for sharing that, Mary. Okay, any other burning shares? I just want to say thank you for everyone who participated and shared and was vulnerable, and it really helps everyone on this journey and on this path to embody like a lot of the teachings here. So thank you so much.
I just want to say quickly that with this book that I'm reading, I've kind of understood how it is that we can experience spirit.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Ernesto. All right. I will see everyone next week, hopefully. Thank you for coming. Thank you for
Okay.
sharing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have an amazing
Very.
week.
Thank you, everyone.
Don't forget your homework. Forgive everybody.
And that's key. That's key.
Thank you.
Spirit.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank
Goodbye.
you.